at the center of the ocean, where it all began for your group. A ring of rock juts out from the center of the water. Inside a swirling whirlpool forebodes the summoning of Tiamat, queen of dragons and mother of Kurvan. Standing at the precipice, an eldritch figure of unimaginable horror gobbles up the very followers and brought him back into this world. Cthulhu, father of Vic. Already you hear the roars of Tiamat as she is brought forward into this world to join in unholy matrimony with the Great Old One. You already know how this ends. The two of them come together, they destroy the world as you know it, and they live happily ever after. But there is one last chance. A final paradox would be what brings Cthulhu his perfect form, but not if it is at the hands of his death that causes it. Despite the horrors at the center of the ocean is calm. Steam rises from the water in the midnight air. The fog is cool against your skin, and it smells of salt. It's quiet in this area, but you hear the distant sounds of battle encircling you. Bataran and Davrosian forces fight amongst themselves, miles away. Their navy is trying to regain control over those among them who have fallen to the mine repositories. The hard-barred cart, now a hard-barred boat, arrives to help you, and on its deck you see your cavalcade of followers. Shunk, Bruce, Bird 69, Horse 69, Dewey, Bark Ruffalo. All of them. You have too many to list in this monologue. Shunk holds his shining stone to the sky as a beacon of friendship to all of you, but especially Rin and Vic. Bruce flexes bigger than you've ever seen, ripping the shirt off his chest in the process. Almaz's inner airship flies down. On the deck, Thel and Trogdor. And flying behind the ship, Shing. Bright blue wings soaring across the sky. He lets out a triumphant caw! You hear the sinister voice of other Kurvan boom through the air.
I am the pinnacle of what you could have hoped to become.
Fuck that guy.
Who are you to stand against me?
And other Garamond approaches you. He asks the question, who are you?
We? We're the fucking Three Dog Knights.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the final battle of the campaign. One final chance to bring about peace. Some of you may die tonight, and as a group, you may not even succeed, but I want you to know that it has truly been my honor to DM for you over the last 4 years. So I ask one final time, please roll for initiative.
Yeah. Put your ring on before you roll for initiative for advantage.
So this was our final session after 4 years, and we've done so many things together, had so much fun. We all have matching tattoos. 4 or 5 of us have matching tattoos, that is, and I really wanted to make something special that would represent a lot of the things that I did. I built a lot of kinetic sets, different things that moved and they could place their characters on. I also did a lot of things where I'd work with fluid effects. You can see water coming up. This is kind of a combination of fluid effects and a set. Elephant's toothpaste, flash paper for fire. So I had kind of sets and fire and water and chemicals, and I also built a lot of survivor style puzzles and games with ball rolling game and pucks and things. So that was kind of a third pillar of things that I really liked to do. And then lastly was full on DMX shows. I do magic shows and sort of like music, or I hired dancers to come in, but without them knowing and things like that. So I wanted to do something that combined all these 4 elements that I often did.
Find her footing. She's a bit too big. She roars with her remaining 3 heads and should cut 2 of them off.
The first step was to build out the whirlpool itself. This is based on the King of Random's tutorial on how to build a flaming whirlpool. This one obviously doesn't have the flames. It's the same pump and the same bowl that he suggests. And you can see I'm trying out just different size holes to see what works, different draining speeds. Next, what I needed to do was test, because I wanted to put this whole thing feet underwater, but I didn't know if the whirlpool was still going to be tall enough coming out of the plastic. And it's a good thing I did, because I tested it in this trash can to be a cheaper way, so I'm not drilling and cutting into the koi pond. This didn't work at all. You can see that the whirlpool disappears once water gets higher than it, so I had to change plans a little bit. In the meantime, before I decided what I was going to do, I scratch built the frame out of 2x4s just by laying it on top of the upside down koi pond. And here I'm siphoning out, draining it after testing. I was afraid that the plastic was going to bulge out from the koi pond, but it holds its shape pretty nicely. And here you can see I've given it a nice black coat of paint. And here we arrive at problem number 1. Don't build something that's supposed to be submerged for hours at a time out of wood and cardboard. I got this from Home Depot. I just went to the back and asked them for some free corners to refrigerators. It's this hard cardboard and then some foam. And this is going to be the base of the volcano. I kind of sculpted it out of this. But later on, you'll find out in the video, it grew mold. I could have seen that coming. Right off the bat from the first mistake, we get to the second mistake. I used a very coarse quickcrete to make the volcano. Not only was it extremely hard to apply to the vertical surfaces, no matter what thickness of the mixture I made. I experimented with a bunch of different thicknesses. It was just too coarse and rough. Get some actual waterproof materials from Smooth On. I buy stuff from Smooth On all the time. I know exactly the product I need, but I said, no, I'll use concrete. And I used 2 50-pound bags. Now, a lot of that fell out and made a mess, so the volcano is probably about 50 pounds. But what a dumb idea. Originally, there was just 1 pump, but I had to up it to 2 because apparently when I lifted it up higher, there was more weight pushing down, and so I needed the extra oomph. Next, I've carefully measured from every angle to know that this is exactly where I want to put my spray paint. Each corner. And shake this up enough, it's pretty watery. And I cut a hole in both the plastic and the plywood. Fits nicely. Next, it's time for a little bit of paint. Hey, what are you doing in there? He said, I don't know, you pulled me back in for videos. Here's the first test after siliconing the edges of it. It leaked quite a bit at this point, kind of down in the center. And also eventually when we did use it, it leaked out over the plywood over about 4 hours. It started coming out of the sides of the plywood. Here's some early tests of having the volcano fit in there. You can see I put some waterproof lighting. This was just something I got at Lowe's for ponds. And then I sprayed it very wetly with brown spray paint, and then before it could dry, I went in and just very easily scratched it away from the surface to make these lightning bolt shapes. It was kind of like cracks in the lava that the light could come through. And then that helped really to illuminate the whirlpool. This is my first fill up before a session, that is. I've filled it up plenty of times, but prepping for the session and ready to go with the lights inside. This is the session before I filled in those gaps between the sides. You can see the wood inside of here. In the second session that I did this with, I put in some kind of leather. Ooh. Only the top ones are glowing because it was out in the sun. They glow bright. These are pretty fun. Alright, so 4.5 hours into the session, the silicone on this finally failed. It was leaking in small areas before, but now it's just leaking too much, so we got 4 hours out of it, and then I'll be able to repair for the next group, but draining for now. So, more or less successful test. So to really make sure that I didn't get any water on my electronics, everything was GFCI'd, but to make sure nothing got in, I really wanted to silicone these edges here where this leaked out over 4 or so hours. I even put a layer of silicone and then some waterproof tape from Gorilla, and then even glue gun on top of that where I still had gaps because it was tough to get that waterproof tape to be perfectly tight over the existing silicone. I just wanted layers and layers of safety, but it was still really tough to waterproof. And I mentioned earlier in the video that there was mold, so here it is shocking the water just to try to kill off some of that mold. It won't get the stuff that's already grown deep into the water, but hopefully it should kill off the surface mold for the next 2 weeks that I'm using it.
If you're familiar with Sirenscape, this is the way that I do my music in the game. I use the Sirenscape online player, which means it just has a little bit of better interface in my opinion. And this is where you actually create, upload the things that you want, and I have a few different things. Here's the final monologue down in the bottom. And I triggered the audio kind of in a combination button with Node Red. You'll see here that I have a lot of different buttons, and these are all set up to kind of say trigger horizontal, vertical setup for Peridot, one of the characters where she's sitting. This particular node flow here will change the colors of the DMX lights and change the position of the DMX lights, sending it through a rate limiter, and I'll talk about why I have to rate limit it in a moment. And then here is the node for UDMX that sends it out to the USB that controls the DMX. Now, on Windows 10, I used to send tons and tons of data through DMX. I used to send it animated from Unity through DMX to the lights themselves. But this Surface Pro is Windows 11, and I think that the plugin wasn't properly developed for Windows 11, so it crashed when I sent too much. So I had to rate limit all the information, which wasn't terrible. It was just a lot of troubleshooting, and it doesn't immediately change. Like in the video, you'll see sometimes it kind of flashes from like blue, red, and then it goes white because it's not sending the DMX as fast as it can go. If you're not familiar with Node Red, you should definitely take a look at some of my other videos. It shows how I use them, at least. Not in-depth tutorials, but there's a lot of tutorials online that show how to use it. It's very easy. You can do things like hook up your Alexa to change your hue lights without any code or anything, just these nodes. Or in my case, I write a little bit of code. So this is to change just the positions of the DMX to point at the pond in my case. So I wrote a little bit of code and then sent out the messages from there. And then just by pressing these buttons, it initiates everything. And specifically, to run the show itself is this page. You'll see that Node Red lets you do different flows. It's a great way to organize things. And here I have a button that says Sirenscape Final Song. It's using the Sirenscape API. When you go to, let's say I wanted to get the code to use Final Monologue, I'd go to this here, and I would say show remote control links. There's also a CSV method, and I have some cool scripts that I wrote for that to download only the parts that you want, because downloading this will take everything that's all of your custom sounds and Sirenscape sounds. Well, I wrote a little Python script that would go through and filter out the CSV file to only the stuff you want. You would just give it a string of what you want. So maybe I'll do a whole separate video on that sometime, because it's really handy. But in this case, I only needed the one song, so I just said show remote control links, and then by hitting play here, it copies it to the clipboard. Now, I can't show you what that code looks like because it includes an auth token, authorization token for my specific account, which should not be shown on video. But it gives you some code, and then that's what is in sending the information from here. Sent it to this HTTP request. This is just a note here where I have specifically sending out with my auth token the command that Sirenscape wants to be able to play this audio. So when you press this button, every one of these lines that's coming out of here is going to be a command that comes out all at once. So you see it goes and does the HTTP request, and then it says, okay, start this show, do horizontal, vertical, point the lights at the DM, me, and I have it set to bright white. It's a subflow. I won't get into that. It's kind of, I have subflow with other code and stuff. Then you'll see that all these lines go to these delays. So actually timed out during the song of my whole monologue and everything, and where I wanted the audio to point at during this. And I know at 12 seconds I want it to point at the pond and be red. I want it to change to green at 24 seconds. I want it to do lightning at 35 seconds. Lightning is a subflow that I have it set to just do like a lightning pattern that's already built into the DMX lights. And you'll notice I'm still limiting it to 12 messages per second. That's an arbitrary value. I could probably do it a little faster, but I really didn't want it to crash during the show, and this was an acceptable speed. The DMX should go way faster than this, so this is I do believe that it's the plugin is not updated for Windows 11. And you see that going into this UDMX node here. That's the gist of I use just a cheap Amazon USB to DMX controller to go from the USB to that. Because it's a Surface Pro, I also have a cool USB D, whatever the newest kind of USB is, that splits it out into HDMI, all the different USBs, and I have a USB hub from there that's powered, so I can plug in all my different USBs like mouse and everything, and then that connects to my wireless DMX controllers. I think I have another video of those somewhere else. They're really handy. It means you don't need to run wires everywhere. I can run it all the way across the house, just wireless signal, and it works great. I've not noticed any dropped frames or anything.
So here you can see them mounted up on kind of the platform that the garage door motor is on. I've bolted them in through their platform at the bottom, as well as zip tied them for some extra safety. And they did their job. It was difficult to point them down kind of where the motor would cast a shadow, but they hit mostly everything we wanted for that night. It worked out pretty well. And instead of plugging in DMX wires, I actually have the wireless DMX going into this, and also works very well. Thanks for watching. Oh yeah, and a couple people asked me if they won.
14 damage.
14? Matrix? The ice shard explodes, correct? The spell?
Yes.
Tell me how you killed Cthulhu.
Whoa!
He had one HP left, and then any ice shard explosion was gonna do it. Tell me how you kill Cthulhu.
It inserts, and then it's like.
You hear a roar. You hear a blah 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 as you, being grasped by the tentacles, fall from his grip. Not high enough to cause any fall. You're falling into the water. We're not going to deal with that. You see your father, Cthulhu.
Oh no.
And you hear one final thought. What the fuck? And you have an opportunity to send him one last final message back in return.
I'm falling. I got a promotion!
Tell me how you send her back to her home plane.
I stand up on the back, and then I fire the jetpack, and I just do a slice like through her, and like as the blade cuts through, like space distorts, and she like kind of gets inverted and sucked into like a thing that just like.
A vortex, perhaps?
Yeah.
A whirlpool
Yeah.
that she falls backwards into in your attack. She roars with her remaining 3 heads, and you cut 2 of them off. Tiamat, your mother. Oh no, Melanie isn't here. We'll drag this out. She grasps with great strength as she's sucked back into the whirlpool just as Melanie re-arrives in the garage. Sucked back into her home plane of Avernus. Tiamat, previously summoned just like 10 turns ago,
A minute ago.
now
very fast
unsummoned. You have defeated the Queen of Dragons.